All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to get started in about a minute. For those of you who just joined us, we do have a thread because we want to keep some time for open Q&A from the audience. And you can find that thread in general. It's called Questions for Career Panel Product and Design, or you can just go to announcements and look at the latest announcements and click there. Please keep this thread just for questions, and then any other discussion you can have in general chat. All right. I guess actually it is 2 p.m. So we will go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone who's listening, and also to all of our amazing panelists. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Kristen. I'm the CEO of Top GG, and I also have a product background. We're really excited to have 4 really fantastic people here today from both product management and design background. So this is going to be a mix of a moderated Q&A and also open questions. Great, we will go ahead and get started. So first, I'm just going to ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves. I'll call on you one by one, and if you could just share, just a little bit about yourself, current role, previous role, and background. And we would love for all of you to share a fun fact, and that fun fact is going to be, what is your favorite game? All right, Gracjan, could you start us off with intros?
Sure. I think we're just missing Katherine.
Oh,
I think she's in
oh
audience.
no.
Yeah, we just invited.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Yeah. ER, if you could help us with that would be great. Oh, I see her there again. Thank
works
you.
right now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Christine. So yeah, I'm Gracjan. I'm a senior product designer here at TopGG. But my background was I started as a UX designer in game dev company. So it was CD Projekt Red. Probably you may know. Yeah, I was working a little bit in game dev, and later I switched for more like software companies, but still connected strictly to the gaming, esports, stuff like this. So yeah, now here we are at TopGG. Oh yeah, and favorite games. I don't know, it's probably Valorant right now. So
Great.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Gracjan. Lauren, could you go next? And for those of you who might not know, Lauren's actually my sister. So I had to bribe her to come join us today for this panel.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can tell we're related by our voices, but my name's Lauren. I'm a product designer at Scale. I grew up in the Bay Area, studied psychology in my undergrad because I was fascinated by human behavior. I had a pretty non-linear career path. After college, I ended up in academia doing psychology research at UCSF and Stanford, and then I did a career pivot to market research, and that's where I actually discovered my passion for design and decided to quit my job and do a design bootcamp. And since then, I've worked at IBM, Salesforce, and now I've been in a new role at Scale, which is a late stage startup, for about a month. My favorite game, it was really hard. I would say my favorite childhood game is Nintendo Super Smash. And then I guess the most recent game I played was Diablo 3. Thanks for having me, Kristen.
Thanks, Lauren. Let's see. Ziggy, will you go next?
Yes. Y'all can hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hey everyone, my name is Ziggy. I am currently a product manager at Twitch, working on the new viewer experience or new user experience. My path to where I am today, I used to be a software engineer for about 5.5 years. 3 years in, knew it wasn't for me when everyone else was going to conferences to get better engineering and I could care less. And so I decided to go realize that I liked solving problems with people, less with code. So I thought I wanted to be a consultant, got my MBA and tried that. And I was like, no, still don't like this. But realized product management was kind of the nice in between because I loved building as an engineer and creating something from nothing. So joined Twitch 3 years ago, working with developers actually to launch extensions on Twitch. And then that's where I met Kristen actually. And then have since moved into product management where I'm now working on new viewer experience. And so fun fact, the game. Okay, so like Lauren, I would say like Super Smash is probably one of my go-to old favorites because I don't game as much as I used to now. Oh no, I'm lying. Final Fantasy 10. Sorry, that's 100% the answer.
Love it. Thank you, Ziggy. And yes, Ziggy and I met at Twitch a couple years ago, and I'm very happy we did. And then last but not least, Katherine.
Hi, everyone. I'm a product manager at Caper. We build smart shopping carts, and we were recently acquired by Instacart. In my past lives, I studied chemistry in my undergrad, went into consulting, and then decided I didn't want to do that either. And then did a design boot camp and then freelance for a while, and then pivoted again into product. I guess now at Caper slash Instacart, I work on our hardware and software, like smart shopping cart product. I've led product and design and QA teams, so I'm happy to share more later.
Great. Thanks, Katherine. And yeah, now we're going to go into a couple different questions. The first question we have is, can you tell us how you got your very first product or design internship or job? Lauren, will you kick us off?
Sure, yes. My first design job was at IBM, and I had just finished the product design bootcamp where I had built a portfolio and then done some work for some startups since it's kind of an apprenticeship program. So I was pretty lucky. I was really excited to kick off my design career and was applying to a lot of jobs, but it was really important. Something that was really important that helped me was actually getting a referral. And if you don't know, a lot of tech companies have a referral program where an employee at the company you can apply through the job through a special link, and it helps you kind of plan that first interview. So I think that was really helpful when I was at IBM. And luckily, I was in a special program called Patterns. It's for early career folks or job switchers. So I was lucky to be able to join that. And they actually flew us to Austin and the IBM office there to do a little boot camp and learn more about design thinking for the first 6 weeks and then help you ease on to your product team. So I think that was a really great first job for me just to start the world of design.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. Gracjan.
Yeah, so I actually like switched from QA tester to junior UX designer at CD Projekt Red. I started as QA tester, but I have some previous background in web design and stuff like this, and they really needed the junior UX designer for the Gwent The Witcher card game because there was none people with any experience at the time. And yeah, I started like developing this game like only by myself in terms of like UX design, but later a lot of people joined, and yeah, and I learned a lot from them. So that was actually pretty exciting part of my life, definitely.
Great. Thanks, Gracjan. Ziggy.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I started as in developer experience working as a developer relations manager at Twitch. So I got to start engaging with the product teams there. That's where I met Kristen as a PM and I knew where I wanted to end up. So started engaging with them early, networking with PMs and group product managers and product directors around the company, like expressing my incredible interest, being like, I want to be a PM. When you have a space, please take me. And it took a couple of years, but just staying on top of roles, keeping those relationships open, showing like the work that I've done, like launching different extensions and understanding like why this product can work, why it won't work, being able to use that in interviews across the company. Like I just built my brand at Twitch. And so that's kind of how like when our VP of viewer experience at the time, Tom, who I had engaged with, knew that I was looking at a role open on his team, I was the first person on his mind to be like, I know Ziggy was looking. This is a role that would fit her. Does she want to join the team? And so I remember because it's really hard to get a product job when you have no experience. And so I remember someone gave me the advice of join a company you're interested in the role that they'll take you for, and then network your way to the job you want.
Yes, that is great advice, Ziggy. And I think it's true. Yeah, it's really hard, not impossible though, to get a product job without product experience, but there's a ton of different pathways there. And Katherine.
Sure. I guess I'll speak a little bit both to my first design job and my first product job. So right out of boot camp, I actually just worked really hard on networking, and I actually went to a lot of hackathons back when people met in person. But I'm sure there's also a lot of online opportunities for that as well. I think you get to kind of show off your skills, try and learn something new, and meet a lot of interesting people. And so I followed up with a good number of them, and they turned into, other opportunities to go to hackathons together or go to events together. And sometimes they would know people who are looking for designers at smaller startups, and then eventually and so that's how I landed a couple of my first freelance gigs. I also joined a co-working space, and that was really helpful to build community and look for opportunities, and also have other folks connect me with them. And then for my first PM job, also something similar to what Ziggy was mentioning, I joined my current company, Caper, and then became a PM kind of after working as a designer for a little bit. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. I love that. Yeah, I think it's really cool. I see a lot of people, move from different career paths into, product or designer, move between them. And I think that a question we get a lot in our different career panels here is, do I need to study something specific? But I hope the stories you're hearing today show you that there's a ton of different paths to work in whatever function you are really excited about. So our next question is going to be, what inspired you to select product management or design as your career path? I know we've touched on that a little bit in a couple answers, but I wanted to kind of ask that explicitly, since we have a lot of folks in the audience trying to figure out what they want to do. Catherine, Ziggy, can you kick us off for that one?
Notes. So yeah, I kind of alluded to it, but in my previous job when I was working as an engineer, I actually started on a kind of like 20% project. It wasn't really 20% because I was 100% working, and then 20% doing this. It's 120%. Building a resource planning tool. So I was working at an IT consulting firm, so we were building web solutions for a lot of different clients, and we had project managers who were managing all of us, what projects we were working on, et cetera, like lining up stuff, right? And they had to do all of that in Excel. And I was just like, this is dumb, but the company's not paying for you to have a tool, so I'll build you something. And that was kind of my first taste of product management, although I didn't actually know that that's what I was doing at the time. Taking it, like understanding, being empathetic to a customer's pain points, working with them to figure out like what is the things that they actually need, how to prioritize. And I started building it myself with a couple friends at work, and it's like grew into this big thing. And from that I took, you like solving problems, you should go be a consultant. When if I just had like PM friends in my life, they would have been like, oh, you should go be a product manager. Like this is something you would be really good at. It was later when I learned more
That's
about
what I would have said to you too, Ziggy. Yeah, I was like, wait, that's like the best way to get into product.
I know. If only I knew. I figured it out later, thankfully. But that's how I knew. I love solving problems. I love working with people, because people have different perspectives, and like I love thinking about like how someone sees something differently than me all the time. And you have to do that as a product manager. You have to get out of your own perspective. And it's an exercise I enjoy. So that's kind of why I want to be and still in it.
Love it. Thanks, Ziggy. Catherine.
I think what inspired me the most when I first kind of started exploring design was it was just really magical to create something. In the job that I was doing before in consulting, I was doing analysis or graphs and slides, but it was really cool to see like my designs or an idea that I had turned into designs come to life. And from kind of design to PM, it was really trying to combine some of that like design sensibility with the business background that I had started to build. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Lauren.
Yeah, definitely +1 to what Katherine said. It's really fun and exciting to bring ideas to life. But when I was first doing market research at LinkedIn, I actually didn't know what product design was. And I was thinking I wanted to become a little bit more technical in my career and do data science, but upon reflecting my job and what I really liked, I actually didn't enjoy writing SQL queries and running them all day. I really liked doing data visualizations, which actually had some elements of product design. I had to talk with my product marketing stakeholders and kind of think about how someone might be using the dashboards I was making and think about the best way to display the information. And at the same time, I was also browsing jobs as one does when they are bored in their current role. So I reached out to a ton of product designers after I had read a description and was like, wow, what is this? It sounds so interesting. My whole career was in market research, which is basically getting insights. And it was really fun to give a voice to the customers and members and survey them and understand them. But I really wanted to be more involved in taking action upon those insights. And product design was a little bit more upstream, being involved in actually making the product, and working with users to actually respond and implement some of those changes that you would discover in research. So it was kind of those factors that led me to product design, and I'm really happy I made that career switch.
Thanks, Lauren. Gracjan.
Yeah, I think I always wanted to do something like creative and artistic, and being an artist, like, I failed with that. So I think I started as more like traditional graphic design, and that was why I wanted to do something creative. But then when I moved more to like UX, product design, stuff like this, I think the main reason was to like solve the problems and help people. And like making things that are like cool to use. That was, I think, the main motivation for that.
Cool. So I'm gonna pepper in some questions from our audience, just and mix them in with our kind of pre-created questions. So we have a lot of interest from the audience about how new ideas are applied in product management and the workflow of designing the product. From Loom, how do you find new ideas or features for the product, and how do you know when an idea is usable or good? Who wants to take the first crack at this one?
I can take
Yeah.
take this question. In terms of like how do you find the new ideas for product features? Of course, this depends on the company you're working on. But for example, here at TopGG, like most of these ideas is from community. A lot of people are sharing feedback, and they want something. We evaluating those ideas and trying to work on the concepts for that. And how do you know if they are potentially good, usable? Until we implement them and measure key metrics, we usually don't know. So like analytics is really important to see if the feature succeeded and if the feature did some good, let's say, did some good stuff on the website and improve something. Like mostly the feature that doesn't improve something or didn't like get any value, we mostly not doing them, especially in like small startup. So I don't know. I think that's my vision on that.
Yeah, and I'll add that Gratz and I do also do, since TopG, we're pretty small, we're like 11 people. We try to do a lot of user research too, to do as much validation as possible, just so that, by the time we decide to build something, we want to have a lot of conviction there before we actually have engineering start on it. Thanks, Gracjan. Any of the other panelists want to chime in or add anything to this question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Twitch, we always, similar to what Gracjan was saying, we always have the community weighing in. You can just see Twitter for that. But Twitter is hearing straight from the community. Twitter, Reddit is always a good place to like find like fun new ideas that I like to read and learn from people. And we, similar to what you were saying, Kristen, we always have a lot of research going on. So I think it's a mix of like hearing from the community, doing research, and then honestly looking at the site. And we're not sometimes you can, when you see a problem is obvious and you want to solve it, like you're just like, this is something that I want to try. Let's run an experiment, like Gracjan was saying. Look at whatever you're trying to measure for and whatever your goal is, and create a metric for it, and then figure out if it worked or not. But you can get new ideas from literally anywhere, either yourself, research, or like Twitter.
Thanks, Ziggy.
Yeah. I guess I wanted to add a bit of additional dimension in that, like, we make physical shopping carts that you push around in a store. So part of our research is actually just literal people watching. So we'll go ahead and do that as well. I think that's one of the most fun parts of my job, just getting to watch people ask them a lot of good questions. And then another aspect that maybe is a little different for Caper, where I work, is our business model is B2B2C. So we care both about the B2B part is like us and like a grocery store or a grocery chain. So we have to care about what they care about and see what is important to them and just talk to them to understand their needs and their priorities. Like maybe they're really worried about theft of their items if they're using our shopping carts in their stores. And then the B2B2C, so the consumer who is, you or me in, running around in the store, like maybe we care about this working really well or being really efficient or, giving us extra discounts or something. So we also talk to a lot of customers. So there's definitely different angles of research as well that we tap into.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I think there's also, I have never worked on like a physical or hardware product, but I think there's a whole nother element of challenges, when you're not able to iterate as quickly on, hardware versus software, right? Lauren, did you want to add anything to this question?
Hard.
I think that everyone covered it. I think one little point is it really depends on the company. Like sometimes it's like more top down and the product managers will come and say, here's a list of features and requirements. Like they've already looked at the business or talked to customers. And then as a designer, you can iterate on those and do additional research. And at other companies that are maybe more design forward, it's more of a discovery and really saying, okay, what are our customers or users' problems that they're solving and how can we best address them? So just wanted to call out that one nuance is it sometimes depends on the type of company and the way that requirements come down, if it's more top down or bottom up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've worked at a couple different companies in product, or at least seen the process. So like LinkedIn, Twitch, Pinterest, and SoundCloud, and now TopG. And I'll say every single company, whether it's big or small, or depending on the industry, has its kind of own flavor of, I guess, product management or design or that product development process. I'm going to go to another question from our audience. Zotera is asking, has your design or product team ever started falling behind engineering in terms of velocity? And what's the process for dealing with it when something like that happens?
I don't know, it happens once in my career. It usually doesn't happen so often, but of course, it depends on the case and company. It's hard to say the one answer, but in this case, it was just, we need to hire more designers, right, to keep up with the work. Like engineering team was huge and like design team was very small. So I think it really depends.
I remember when I was starting as a product manager, I didn't necessarily have as big of a backlog of stuff. These days I do because I've been thinking about like the space that I've been in and just like come up with like ideas and I write a quick specification for it and I'm just like, okay, this is what I would like to look at, and I just like write little ones. But at the beginning, it can be hard for someone starting out. So they would like I would say like new PMs, I would hope teams like help them either with easy projects just to give them, or if they want them to do the actual thinking from scratch, give them time to do that and like build a backlog of ideas so that when you're coming ready to the engineering teams, you're not like, sorry, I only have 2 things for you to do, and I know you're going to finish them in a month, and then I have nothing.
Yeah, I can relate. I remember when, I think it's hard, like when you start a PMW, you're almost like, I was just scrambling to get something together for the team to do. Or also, as Gracjan said, like it just depends on team sizes and kind of the ratio of, a PM or designer to the engineering team.
Yeah, from the design side, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was just gonna say from the design side, definitely, I feel like there's always a hustle, and ideally you're ahead of engineering, but there's different tactics you can do. Like, for example, just learn how to iterate very quickly. So maybe you haven't done a full UX process, but you're still able to just at least give some guidance to the engineering team. There's other ways I've seen people do it. Maybe they just have an office hours where they say, hey, the developers take your just do the first stab and like just come check in with us to ask UX guidance and advice and kind of work together along the way. So there's ways to kind of work around if you feel like you're getting behind a little bit, but I think it all comes down to ruthless prioritization to make sure you're working on the most high priority items first and not falling behind on those. But I think there's different ways to work around that.
Yeah, and I think it happens maybe more often that for me right now, as we're like shifting a lot of like we're hiring, team sizes are changing all the time, and we're still quite a scrappy startup right now, even though we're inside of Instacart. And really good advice that I've received is just, it's okay if the product team needs to say like, hey, we're not ready and we need to take the extra time to plan. Like if you really do need to be making the right decisions or doing the right research, look, you never want to push just busy work onto your engineers either. And it is an opportunity for them maybe to partner with the PMs and the designers as well to say like, hey, like let's figure out, what's going on and why we are behind all together. So I don't think it should happen all the time, but if a pause is necessary, I think we should call it out and not be afraid of that.
Yeah, I think that's so important, right? It's like, I think really something super important for, both product management and design is to, or even engineering, like, right, if there's an issue or a problem or something's not going to work, you have to call it out. Great. Okay, next question. What skills do you think are most important to succeed in your current day-to-day roles? Katherine, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Sure. I think Lauren already alluded to it, but ruthless prioritization is so critical, especially as a PM where like everyone just wants a piece of your schedule and time. My schedule is often packed back to back. And so whether that's for the product or even day to day, applying, good, analytical and critical thinking mindset and making trade-offs and understanding, why you're doing something and whether or not it is the most important or has the most return on your investment in time or effort or energy is really important. And then the second thing right now for us, I think, is being really resourceful. I don't think we have a whole ton of resources yet, and I know we're tapping into Instacart now that we've been acquired. But I think it's about being agile and thinking of alternatives or ways to kind of prototype quickly or find creative ways to test an idea out. So some of the things we do is like, instead of building out full shopping carts, we'll grab cardboard boxes and build shopping carts and bring people in and ask what they think about, certain cart sizes or shapes. Yeah, and then maybe the last thing is communication is so important, whether that's verbal or written communication. And for us in particular, we also work with a team in China. So half of our company is in China where we're building out our hardware. And so especially because we don't have a whole ton of overlapping time and work a lot asynchronously, communication is really important. And I think those three things that I've listed are also, I guess, maybe classically classified as like softer skills. And I honestly think that like they're not any lesser than like so-called hard skills. So I think if anyone is looking to like think about, hey, like what skills do I really need? It's not just about like being really good at the technical things.
Great.
I
Thanks,
wanna,
Katherine.
sorry.
Yeah, Ziggy.
I'm
Oh, no,
done.
go ahead. I was just about to call on you, so you read my mind.
Okay, good, because I wanted to like piggyback on what Katherine was saying because those soft skills matter so much because as a product manager, so much of your job is, again, like the part that I said I liked is working with people. But people don't always see eye to eye, and trying to keep a team aligned to a vision is more than just saying it once and more than like it's kind of a drumbeat. And there are different ways to like keep the drumbeat up and trying to be like, guys, we are trying to solve the issue for new viewers on Twitch because they come here and they're confused because there's a lot of things happening to them all at once. And we want to help them stick around so that they can create an account and eventually chat and then eventually like subscribe to streamers so that they can make an income and creators can keep winning on this site, right? Like, so like keeping the vision alive and sharing it in a way that people understand and can ride or die for you is like so critical in this job. And then I think at the same time, being able to do that in a way that like so much of this job is persuasion and how much you can get people to like come on your side to get what you want done, because you're always going to be resource constrained. And so the more people that believe in you, that like you as a person, you're not running them over, the more you can get done too. So along with the critical and analytical skills, a lot of the soft skills, like just to get your work across the finish line, are super important.
Thanks, Ziggy. Yeah, from my own experience, I absolutely agree. I think whenever there's kind of conflict or issues, like so much of it boils down to, those communication or soft skills. And those are, super important to keep a team running. Lauren, Gracjan, do either of you want to chime in on that question?
Yeah, I can add, because I agree with the communication, like empathy in terms of the users to understand them is like, I agree, it's super, super important. But like if you work in a small startup, I think what is very important is ability to work quick, efficient, and iterate on the design, because there's a lot of changes and most of the time you are only the one designer in the company. So it's nice that you can, have this, like, I think it's a skill to like work quite quick and iterate on those changes.
Thanks, Gracjan. Lauren, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all the people mentioning soft skills are important. I think one specific branch of that is storytelling. Like, I don't even learn what this was until recently, but essentially it's like, can you really communicate your ideas clearly and compelling? And I think it is helpful from even just starting your interview. How do you tell your career story? How do you land the job? And then being able to present ideas and influence stakeholders and captivate an audience. So I think that's also an essential skill that kind of falls under communication as well. And then on that note too, is just for design specifically, how do you advocate for your user and explain trade-offs, which also touches on communication to your different teams and being able to make those trade-offs so that you can advocate for the user, but still like meet the deadlines and get things implemented with the team.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think storytelling is something that is so, so important, especially when you're working on really complex or difficult to understand topics. We're going to go back to some questions from our audience. We have some interest regarding how product managers typically communicate changes after the initial design, and also how designers might push back, etc. So Boba is asking, I guess for the designers, how do you deal with product requirements being changed, and how do you decide whether or not to push back? And on the, I guess, product side, how do you communicate these new requirements to engineers? Yeah, whoever wants to jump in first.
I can start again if
Thanks,
nobody wants to
Katherine.
take this one. I mean, of course it depends, because at the beginning of my career, it was like really frustrating when something was changing. But right now I kind of grew up to that, and I believe if the change is good, like let's go for that, because like design is about the iterating, because the first version is never perfect, right? About pushing back, like sometimes when like person above you, like, or like product manager, someone like wants to have some change and you don't agree with, you need to have some, like, I don't know, analytics metrics to prove your point, right? To push back. Sometimes, of course, you have your design intuition, and of course, it depends. Maybe in small startup you can win with that, but in bigger company, probably no. So I think that's my point on that.
Thanks, Gracjan. Anyone else want to chime in on this one? I'm also happy to answer.
One more point from the design side is just kind of speak the language of your stakeholder, understand what metrics drive them, like why are they changing it? Maybe there's a good reason. And then definitely kind of making those trade-offs again. One tool that some people use in design is if you make a matrix and you just have like the impact to the user on the y-axis, and then on the x-axis have like technical implementation, you can kind of rank different features and prioritize. And then maybe you say, hey, I'm not willing to change this because I think it will really harm the user experience, but be flexible on other things. And then also kind of don't be too attached to your designs, just view them as being ephemeral, but being flexible, and then just being able to understand why other people are proposing things and what metrics are driving them, and then being able to advocate for the users on certain things.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. Ziggy or Catherine, anything from the product side?
I'll go first.
You go.
This time. Yeah. I think any healthy PM design and eng team should have the freedom or feel comfortable pushing back on each other. It's not necessarily just the PM changing the specs. But yeah, I think just to echo some of the thoughts already is this like making sure you're communicating why instead of just demanding that the change be done is important. And when you can explain that and build that healthy team, then I think that you start to build an understanding and can move together in a more agile way.
Yeah, ideally, to the point I was making about being able to communicate your vision. If you're constantly checking in with your team, then I think usually when you get like significant pushback, it's because you haven't been talking to your people. And if it happens from above, obviously that can always happen. And so trying to validate the reason, like having your metrics set, and giving the validation for why you're pursuing a certain path, and like asking them to come back with, I think Lauren and Gracjan said this too, asking them to come back with why they think this is the direction itself. But within the team, like I said, if I try to keep my drum beat so everyone's aligned, and like usually you're coming up against little bumps instead of like these huge roadblocks of pushback.
Thanks, Ziggy. Yeah, I definitely have dealt with this with a lot of our teams that I think, as everyone said, communication is really key. And if there's a problem, just talk about it, try to find a solution with your team and weigh all the pros and cons. We have another question about Boba regarding measuring success. So the question is, how do you measure success as a product person or a design person? Is it just the end product being delivered? Is it hitting the milestones? Or is there something more that lets you know you're doing a good job? Who wants to jump in and take this? Or I'm happy to call people if that is easier. I can start, actually. So I'll answer this one. So I think it depends on where you're at. I think Lauren mentioned earlier that a lot of different companies have different product processes and approaches. One common way that I've seen success measured is through OKRs. These stand for objectives and key results. And you kind of, set your objective, your goals, and then at Twitch, I don't know if we still they still do this, Iggy, but I also learned a lot about input and output goals. So, inputs are things you can actually control, and like outputs what you're trying to achieve, but not in your direct control. So that's we would spend a lot of time doing kind of 6-month planning, annual planning, and then setting goals for each half and kind of each quarters, and hitting those milestones. I think for specific products you're shipping, every time you write a product spec or product requirements document or something like that, and you work on something, you should always think about what your success metrics are. And there's a lot of ton of other inputs too. As a product manager, I'm always looking at community feedback, listening to the community, also talking to users, going to where the users are, looking on Twitter, Reddit, etc. So I think there's a lot of different inputs, but I think quantitative and qualitative are both super important.
Yeah, we still do that. by the way, input and output goals for sure.
Nice.
At Twitch. A lot of it too, because you can start thinking about measuring success and get bogged down. Like, for example, my problem space for user experience is Twitch is confusing, right? I've mentioned that. And like, if I just think about what the end goal is, because at the end of the day, you're trying to change user behavior, right? So what do I want to see happen? Okay, so I want to see people come back to the site. I want to see, like, that would be the output goal, right? Like, how many times people are coming back. So what are the input, and that's the input rate. What are the input goals to that? Like, what are the levers that I have control over that I can potentially get them to come back, right? So part of that could be signing up. Part of that could be I get somebody to follow somebody, or I get somebody to chat for the first time or to engage in some way, right? Like, how do I get them to the activities that I think are going to get them to come back? And so then start measuring those. And like Kristen said, like every experiment you come up with is you're talking about, okay, this is the input goal that I'm trying to measure against, and let me try and see if my idea makes it change.
Yeah,
Thanks,
the
Ziggy.
other way. Oh, yeah. The other, I guess, like, I don't know, terminology around kind of figuring out metrics that we're starting to shift towards too, is just the North Star metric framework. So similar to what Ziggy said, there's like one metric for us using shopping carts is to have like loyal repeating users, right? And so we look at additional metrics and see what would impact that metric, and then what features we could do to kind of move the levers on that. The other thing I wanted to add about metrics or measuring success is that it's not enough for the product manager or the product team to like agree that this is what success means and looks like. Defining success for a product requires, your leadership to also agree, like, yes, this is how we are going to define it, whether that's kind of something that they end up reporting back to their investors or to other people, and also within your team, right? So that they both agree that that's the way that we should be measuring success, and also so that they understand, like, oh, we're doing, these 5 features this quarter because they move these metrics in this way, and that's towards our ultimate goal of this other thing. So measuring success isn't just for, I think, product people, but for aligning the entire team.
Great. Thank you, Katherine. So actually, I have a question that came in via my LinkedIn, and this one is for Lauren. So Lauren, you mentioned you're in the market research space before transitioning. The person was curious about, some skill sets that carried over to design.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question that I've
Or
thought
also,
about a
also,
lot.
sorry,
Yeah.
Lauren. The question it's like, what carried over from market research to design, or also product management? Since I know you didn't go to product, but you do work with a lot of PMs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think definitely just for design is having the research background, since market research, we were doing a lot of survey-based research, and also kind of loops into targeting the right audience, and helping recruit them for user research. So I think definitely the research element is really helpful. And one thing that was really interesting is just thinking about designing a survey, right, that you're going to send out and collect, whether it's NPS or related to some go-to-market research. You kind of have to think about how someone's going to answer the questions and the logical different paths, and like maybe edge cases that come up. I think that's one very similar piece to design as well. Just kind of thinking about the user and how they might be navigating something, whether it's a survey or a product. I think that was like a big similarity. And then for product management, I haven't actually thought about the connection between market research and product management, but I think probably similar. Just I think we did run like some research studies for the product team. Like if you think about how you're going to be user testing a design, right? You want to meet with the audience and walk them through the different prototypes and see how they experience it and get live feedback. So there's definitely a connection there. And on that user testing front is how can you phrase questions without being biased? How do you solicit feedback without asking a leading question, and how do you actually interpret the feedback that you're getting from respondents, whether it's from the market research way or the design feedback.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. We're going to jump to another question from Heather, who's in our audience. She's asking, can you share an example of a time when you had really high convictions of your product strategy and ultimately it didn't resonate with users, and what your takeaways were when this happened? Oh yeah, anyone want to jump in?
I'm like thinking.
Yeah, I know. I have a bunch of these. I'm thinking. Well, here, I can actually kick us off. There was, I think that like the first product I ever worked on was at Twitch. This is where Ziggy and I met, and I was working on the Twitch Insights product, and we were rolling out the first ever kind of MVP, which means minimum viable product for getting game developers data. And when I was doing my research, so many, we were trying to decide, like, do we just get, like, they really need this data, like, do we just get them a CSV and like keep iterating, or do we need the API, what's going to work? And I, looking back on this, like, I mean, it was my first ever product, but in the research, like, so many of, especially the big developers, were like, no, we need the API. Like, we will not use it without the API. The CSV is no good. Like, and then it was complicated, but I was like, okay, for the MVP, we have to have both. And then, we launched it. And then when I looked at the data of who used it, I think, hundreds of people use just the CSV download, like Excel sheet, but only like 2 or 3 people use the API. And so I think, this is not a whole product strategy, but I think for that product itself, like, that was a big lesson that I learned, that just because, your biggest users or kind of largest customers, like some of the big game developers, were asking for this, it didn't actually mean that, they're going to use it. And just because people say they want something, it doesn't mean that they necessarily do. So I think I have learned from that, and now I always try to go with the simplest implementation and just keep iterating and iterating. So that is my story of the first project I worked on, and how I learned a ton, but people they said they wanted the API and they were not using it. Anyone want to add?
I guess I have a similar story, but maybe also adding to the complexity with some like interesting stakeholder management. So the product or feature that I was working on was, having some way for staff to audit carts in case, someone's buying alcohol and they need their ID check. They still need to get their ID check before they check out. And there are definitely some issues or ways that they could kind of trick the cart that we would flag, and we would want the store staff to kind of be able to, double check and make sure the cart has everything that is actually being purchased and no extra items or swapped items. We built out something, and we wanted to have more access to the staff, but our kind of retailer or grocery partner wasn't that receptive to it. They were very insistent that they really wanted this feature. And I think we had some inklings that maybe this is either, we wanted to figure out how to make it work the best for the staff, but just with the time constraints, we went ahead and built the feature anyway. And what we've seen more recently after we've built this out and see them using it is we see them not using it as much as the kind of grocery partner thought they would or wanted them to. So even though they really wanted to reinforce kind of some theft prevention measures or kind of heavy auditing, that wasn't the original purpose and value of what the customer's experience would be, right? The customer just wanted to check out really quickly, and the staff were already way too busy with checking out other people because we were sharing the same area as self-checkout. So the staff pretty much just ignored that feature and didn't kind of achieve what the retailer wanted them to do anyway. So I think the lesson learned is to, one, try to figure out how we can pitch doing the right research, because I think the research would have shown to our retail partner, like, hey, actually, this method works better for your staff, or it would have helped us find maybe more or alternative solutions even, and give us a better understanding of what that true like need really is, and balancing that both from the retailer's perspective and what the staff can realistically do.
Thanks, Catherine. Let's see. Okay, I know we have about 11 minutes left, so I have a lot of questions. I'm going to pick a few. I think we have a lot of people here really interested in starting out their career in product and design. What core skills or programs do you recommend learning, or do you have any favorite resources for someone getting started?
I can take this one.
Great.
I mean, I will start with software. I think because that's maybe not the most important thing, but if you know the software, you're working faster, stuff like this. I think for the like general designing, the Figma is the best tool you can use right now. Also, it's free, it's web-based, so it's easy to start. You don't need to pay anything. And about like courses, I think like everything on YouTube, to be honest, like to learn some basics, it's fine. And also like another thing, it's really good to have some interactive prototypes if you're showing your ideas. So without like engineer, you can really do something interactive that people can use and share their feedback. So software like Framer or Protopy, I think it's also really, really great to know that. Yeah, so that's it from me on the software side.
Thanks, Gracjan. Lauren, do you want to go or Ziggy? Sorry, go ahead, Ziggy.
I'm like trying to think about this for product management. There are a lot of good resources for interviewing. I'm trying to think about for like the actual job itself, but I think they're valuable in that respect too. So there's a guy, I think his name is Lewis Lee, maybe. I'm gonna verify that. But he runs a Slack channel actually for people who've bought his books, I think, and maybe you can get in there without it. Trying to break into product management, and there's a lot of people that are in there that can help you with mock interviews and ask them questions about like different companies and their PM interview styles. I found that super helpful when I was trying to interview. And his books have really good frameworks for how to approach product interviews as well. He's got one really long workbook. He's got another book called Decode and Conquer. And so if you're like thinking about interviewing, just like breaking in, I think his stuff is really good for interviewing. But core skills for the job, I'm trying to.
Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot out there. Yeah, the one I just dropped a few in the thread. Another big one that I've liked is Marty Kagan. He runs Silicon Valley Product Group, and I think he was probably one of the earliest or well-known product folks or product leaders. There's a lot of great.
Onto him actually.
What? Sorry, Z?
I think you actually put me on to Marty Kagan.
Yes, I did. I remember when we talked. Yes, I was like, Ziggy, if you do one thing, just like go check out Marty Kagan's stuff. It's great. There's a lot of free resources and articles on the Silicon Valley product group blog. Also, he has 2 books, Inspired and Empowered. Would recommend reading Inspired first. It's hard. Like, so I feel like so many of the resources are specifically around interviewing, and there's not as much on doing the job. But another kind of podcast I've really enjoyed recently, I have 1 episode there, but I didn't realize they have 8 seasons. It's called Road Monks, product to product podcast, and I like that podcast because it kind of interviews a lot of different product managers, and they tell their stories more anecdotally about what they're doing on the job. Yeah.
One book, plus one on Marty Kagan. I really like his stuff. Another book that I found really helpful is called Product Roadmaps Relaunched. So it goes through kind of like, what is a product roadmap? Why are they important? How do people fail at product roadmaps? And kind of that like drumbeat or vision that Ziggy was talking about, like this is how you would go about kind of setting that. And I think it does a good job of showing you what it would be like to plan a product out and try to figure out how to get buy-in as well. And then I guess if we're speaking generally in terms of like resources or ways to learn. Wow, the audience suddenly just spiked. I don't know what happened.
Oh, wow.
Hello, new friends. um, but yeah, I really like you all are here, like clearly like curious people and interested in like events or speakers. I think going to events, whether that's online or in person, and like hackathons or just conferences, a lot of the things I've learned are, by listening to other people talk about their work, or and getting the most value out of those things is like putting yourself out there, posting like, hey, I'm interested in this, or like, hey, I had this question, and even like, pinging the people that you see speak on LinkedIn later on and be like, hey, can I have like 15, 20 minutes? Because I was really interested in whatever you were talking about. And making those like LinkedIn outreach messages more specific, so that, you increase your chances that someone will respond back to you. And bringing your good questions there is always a good resource.
Thanks. Lauren, did you want to add any on the design side?
Yes, Figma is amazing. That's like something you can play around with. They have a lot of good onboarding and Figma playground, so you can actually teach yourself. It's not a super high learning curve. And I would say if you're trying to get into the field, definitely try to find a design mentor. For example, there's something called ADP list that has a list of design mentors. You can reach out and do a coffee chat. And you can even cold reach out to people if you attend their talks or like them, message them. Maybe sometimes it's hit or miss, but that can be very helpful. And then there's also groups like Designers Guild on Facebook. That's like a 20,000 person group. Definitely has a lot of good resources for people starting their career in design. And they even post threads of upcoming jobs or free portfolio reviews. So lots of free resources online. And if I had to choose one design book, I would say About Face by Alan Cooper. That's like the design Bible that I still reference. So yeah, those are the most important ones I would use if I was starting out.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. And I know we're just at time. Yeah, Discord has been interesting. It like the numbers like have been fluctuating like crazy yesterday, but welcome everyone who just came to, maybe you're there all along and it's just updating now. So for our last question to close it out, we're hoping you could just share one last piece of advice with everyone here. I guess maybe a way to think about it is like, yeah, what did you, yeah, if you just had one last piece of advice to share with everyone, or like something you wish you could have told, your younger self.
Yeah. I I don't know why I didn't do more of this as when I was younger, but like just the power of reaching out and networking and learning from people, like what kind of work we're doing now, like seeking knowledge. There's so much to learn from so many different people, and if you come with like a curious and engaged mind, um, even like cold messaging people on LinkedIn, like you can like probably get a chat like 1 out of every 4 people you message, right? And so if you really want something and you want to go for it, just go seek it, right? It's like it's just there. It's just like you just have to like reach out your hand. So I would say for me thinking about my younger self, like don't be afraid to reach out to people and take the opportunity to learn.
Yeah, I have one advice, which like it's not like specifically related to design, but mostly about like working. I think in any field, it's like you are not your work. Like, don't beat yourself up if you like, did some wrong design, did some wrong decisions. I at the beginning of my career, I was doing that a lot. Like when someone criticized my design, I was like, oh my god, I'm so bad at this, right? And I think this is not a good approach. So just it's nice to get a distance sometimes from your work, and yeah, I think, and that will really help you with your like way or career path.
I love that. I needed to hear that today. Yeah, I think mine would probably be like you can do like anything, but you can't do everything. I think a lot of us here have tried a lot of different jobs and done a lot of interesting switches. So I hope that the message you all are taking away is like, hey, it's never too late for me to switch or try different things. And, you know, other people might tell you you can't do something because you haven't done it before. I would say that's just like so not true. Jump in and start asking questions. On the flip side, I think for me, it's like I want to do a lot of different things. And when I am at the juncture of like, oh, I might be interested in this or that. And Kristen gave me this advice recently too, is just that like, hey, you know, pick a thing and prioritize for what you want. And I don't think it's that the doors are ever like fully closed, but that you're like giving your dedicated time to grow in one direction so that like you can continue to reach out to more things. Like you don't ever lose the things you've already learned. Yeah. Thanks, Christian.
Oh yeah, no, thank you, Catherine. Yeah, I mean, I tell you a lot of advice that I needed to tell my younger self, so I am happy it is helpful. Lauren, do you want to close us out?
Yes, I actually had the same one as Ziggy, so I love that. Mine was network. Like originally, if you had asked me this maybe 10 years ago and said, go network, Lauren, I would say, fuck that, that sounds horrible. Ew, I don't want to talk to people. It's so cringy, right? It seems like you have to be inauthentic or like you want something and have bad intentions. But if you really just reform it in your head and rephrase it, you're actually just meeting new people and learning people. And what Ziggy was saying is if you're genuinely curious, like people love talking about themselves, you can learn a lot. And then also on top of that is if you're applying to jobs, ask for a referral and grow your network. It can really help. I have concrete examples. For example, I was volunteering at an accessibility event, met someone there, and that's actually how I got a job at Salesforce. I asked them to refer me when I saw a role. So just get involved in the community, whether it's hackathons, designathons, volunteer events, and these Facebook groups, whatever it is. Just meet people, ask a lot of good questions, and then also take things with a grain of salt. You know, practice critical thinking, find your own style, and go forth and conquer.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, these are really, really amazing piece of advice. Just want to say thank you again to all of our amazing panelists and also everyone who tuned in for this panel. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we're at time, so we'll wish everyone a wonderful rest of their week and early happy holidays. Thank you again, Katherine, Ziggy, Gracjan, and Lauren for joining us today and everyone who tuned in. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for having
Thanks.
us. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Bye.